And Truth Collins is our speaker today. And I think that he's going to do quite a bit of interactive presentation. So everybody on your toes. So Truth, it's all yours.
Thank you. What I'm going to say is very brief because, calmness has to do with being unconditional. If you've got conditions, then it's going to be very difficult to remain calm because, someone or something is always going to be disturbing the conditions that you're relying on. So the word calm comes from late Latin calma, heat, which is from the heat of the midday sun. In Italy, when everything rests and is still, that's around midday. And the Greek is kauma, which means heat. And there's also kaiein, which is to burn. And so, there's a certain amount of comfort in that. It's a warm time. It's not windy. So we shouldn't forget that, like if something is upsetting, then that's not the calm time of day. So we've kind of taken on this modern meaning of calm as like no problem. But in fact, in order to maintain calm, it's kind of like facing insanity, recognizing disturbances. So the sun symbolism of the midday sun has to do with the light of mind, the light of awareness, the light of consciousness. So a time in the day when one is like the sun, aware, and the sun illumines everything at midday, and there's the heat, the warmth, and the comfort, and so it's to me it reminds me of motherly symbolism because a mother is comforting. A mother, this is something that's is kind of a typically very difficult for men to stay calm, but relatively easy for women. I am generalizing, but it's almost expected of women that they know how to remain calm, and it's a cultural thing as far as I can tell. So let me see. So the light of consciousness, which is represented by the midday sun, that is standing for what lies behind it, which is kind of like the midnight sun, or the let's see, just that, like the unconditioned, the absolute, or the when something goes wrong, we can say the serenity prayer, and that will help us to figure out what we can change and what we can't, and accept and know the difference. But what I'm trying to get at is that being calm is not a matter of just accepting everything. It's actually being painfully aware of the problem. And so, but it is kind of like a surrender where you let go of the lesser degrees of yourself, or the lesser aspects of yourself, as each one gets overturned and upset or criticized. And it's in a way, it's a surrender or retreat into your foundation, into the strongest part of yourself, that which is not subject to conditions. Some people, it's been called the witness aspect of yourself, and you have the three aspects of sensation. You have the observer, you have the act of observing, and you have the object of perception. So that would be the observer, but not an objectified observer. It's kind of like that which is behind all three of those. So when I work, I can be stuck at a table for a while, and if I don't prepare for that, then I'm not going to be comfortable. If I'm not comfortable, then it becomes difficult to remain calm. So that means babying yourself. So you go through all the needs that you might have, like make sure you dress in layers, that you have snacks, you have hydration, and there's things to be aware of, like your breathing. When you get upset, you can have a panic attack, and that is a rapid, shallow breathing, which cuts off oxygen to the brain. And then because you're not getting enough oxygen to your brain, it's a feedback loop, and you start to breathe shallower and quicker. So a lot of these, a lot of remaining calm has to do with awareness of things, and also the ability to put things in perspective. So politically speaking, for example, there may be people trying to get you on board with one idea or the other, but if you can't put it in perspective, then that makes you kind of a victim of your own devices as far as you get into those sorts of taking sides attitudes. So interesting thing I learned about calm when I looked for symbols was in Reiki, there's this Sei Hei Ki symbol, which means God and man become one. And that is supposedly helpful for calmness. So we have to calibrate ourselves in a sense in order to know what calmness is. And it can be really difficult to calibrate the situation, because you get thrown into a situation, and you can't just sit there because people expect you to act, and so you act. But through kind of learning things the hard way, you gradually figure out that some things were not the right actions, and things find their place. Would you be willing to engage in conversation with me?
Judy. Might have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, okay, I'm unmuted, yes. Thank you for your very provocative comments. Truth, we all know what it is to be busy. But what I want to address is the issue of calmness and leadership, because I think that is so important. Like, I was quite impressed when there was a somewhat unexpected attack on the Capitol. The videos, at least, of Nancy Pelosi show her remaining very calm. She's calling the Capitol Police. She's calling the National Guard. She's asking for help. She's asking what to do. And those Capitol Police got all the senators and congressmen to safety at the risk of their own lives, and some of them died. And so it seems that calmness under fire or an unexpected event is very important to this whole issue. I mean, the voice of the silence says that be like the ocean that receives all streams and rivers. The ocean's mighty calm remains unmoved. It feels them not. So, and sometimes in a crisis, you have to act, but you have to remain calm when you act, or as you said, panic can set in. And that's what happens to swimmers who drown, is that instead of relaxing in the water, they go into a panic and lose their oxygen and die. And so it's very important that one remains calm in a crisis, especially in a leadership position where a lot is at stake for others. So, what do you think of that? The importance of calmness in leadership. We need that in our leaders.
I think in the West, they've taken the tact of not casting pearls before swine. And so that goes back to a famous quote from a Roman senator. I can't remember the exact quote, but that's been the strategy to give people the physical and reserve the higher thinking for the leadership. And so the public doesn't really have the highest quality of and they're just being manipulated. They don't have the top level of information to work with. And so I think that it's very important for leadership to remain calm, and that means being aware of that witness aspect of yourself. And that gets very kind of metaphysical and abstract, because the absurdity of anyone who, no matter how great they are, in relation to the rest of the universe, that there's kind of a divine humor about it all, that we are still small in respect to the rest of it. And so I think there's certain humility that helps people remain calm.
Yes, thank you.
I got a question, Truth.
Sure.
And then Helena will be next. I'm looking in the almanac for Tuesday. It says, this is from Shakespeare. Smooth runs the water where the brook is deep. So it seems to be implying that, at least if they would put that in the almanac, that's like saying, be like a deep brook. And also the analogy that Judy just referred to in the Gita, that all the waters can just go into the ocean, but the ocean is calm and unmoved. And the ocean, it's on the surface, it can be subject to the winds and the currents, the winds and so forth. And then there's currents that go through it, right? But then there's the deep ocean, which seems to be calm. So I guess where I'm going with this is, do you have any what do you think theosophy, or you, or both, would throw a light on how to become deep? Not just a deep person that says heavy things, but like the ocean that doesn't get disturbed. Like, how do you become oceanic in that way?
And that's a really difficult question, because I mean, one thing that helps is just to try to get perspective, like the teachings like the Theosophical Sevenfold Nature of Man. That is really helpful in just getting an idea of the spectrum. And so in terms of calibrating ourselves, why is there an emphasis on the top, so to speak, on the spiritual? And that has to do, I think, with where we are in relation to the process. And so if mankind is still predominated by in the fourth round, which correlates with kama, which is desire, and we're coming from the lower, so we've gone through the physical, the energetic, the astral, and in a strong emphasis on desire. And so it's in calibrating the situation, if we realize why there's an emphasis on the spiritual, it helps us not to discount what we've been through already. Do you know what I mean? Because there's a lot of polarization. People want to think that, like the Gnostic thing, like the body's a prison, it's all bad. So to get deep means to have some idea what deep is. So I think it's very important to meet people. Like the word guru means adjuster, but it also means heavy. So you have to meet someone who's heavy enough to move you. Um, not taking that literally, but that their argument is heavy enough to sway your opinion. And you also need adjustments from other people when they have feedback and they say something, and yeah, that you're right. I'll have to reconsider. And that helps us to become deeper.
That's very helpful. Thank you. Do you want to, we've got, before we go to Helena, Ken?
Yes, hello there, Truth, and thanks for the introductory comments there about consciousness and whatnot. For me, the process of going deep can be achieved by some form of meditation in which you connect yourself maybe to the earth or to the ocean, or kind of have the sense of expanding your consciousness to encompass more than just your own ego and your own personality and your own body. And so that kind of meditational practice, I think, can be a skill that you can practice to get more of that deepness or depth.
I totally agree with you. I'm a little leery of orthodoxy, so to speak, and the word orthodox means straightforward, and it's kind of what the concretization of your original intentions. And so even in meditation traditions, I think all those different practices are great, but it should, in order to remain calm, you're always going to have to let go of the conditions. And one thing I read was that calmness is not sufficient. You also need concentration and meditation. So I don't know if they're exactly the same. It's kind of like another topic of discussion. Another day we can focus on meditation, apples and oranges to a certain extent. I mean, of course, concentration and meditation are essential for being able to remain calm, and they open the door, so to speak. So but they're different things.
Truth, do you want to, it looks like do you want to call on the hands? Because people are raising their hands.
I just can't see them. I'm sorry.
If you're not, I'll do it. I can do it. Maurice.
Would you be willing to do that?
I'm happy to do that. It looks like it's Maurice. I just happen to know that Maurice hasn't quite put the C and the E on his name. So
What about Helena? Did we miss her?
yeah, what happened, Helena? She must have pulled her hand down. Maybe she had to jump away.
No, I put my hand down because I was tired of having the screen have a hand on it, but whenever you're ready.
You're tired of holding your hand up there.
Exactly. But
Helena, why don't you
I was thinking about this topic actually all week, Truth, and then today, I guess I was thinking a lot about the Gita and skill in the performance of action. We want to be skillful sailors, and I had the kids, and I was in the car, and I drove through a bank parking lot, and for a split second, I lost my focus, and there's a little curb, and I tapped it, but in a bush, and I remember thinking to myself, okay, what happened in that moment? I got distracted by a thought. I go through this place now for 20 years. I know every single bump and curve and pothole, but calmness, I thought, it captures one part of it. It's like there's this centeredness or a groundedness, or I think the best word I can come up with is like connection. You know, when I'm connected, when I'm walking or driving or in action, I'm like in the zone. And if I stop to think about it, you know, it's like if I stop to think about swimming, it's not going to work at all, and I'm going to sink, you know. So there's this place that we go to, and sometimes calm is what gets us there. You know, sometimes it's more booty or intuition or a letting go as opposed to clinging, you know, to the results of our actions. And we find that spot like riding a bicycle, I think. And we can hit it sometimes, and we know when we're in it. And some people, they have to work really, really hard, you know, if they've got migraines or, you know, medical issues, because it might be a fleeting moment, but it's, you know, their life's work becomes holding on to it. So I loved your speaking about breathing, you know, the connection of the breath, because that resets our vibration. We're sort of like antennae, you know, picking up from the outside and the inside. But thank you. Yeah, it was short, sweet, but good.
Thank you. So that brings up a great point that that when we're trying to remain calm, it's often in the face of adversity. You know, things just aren't working right. We have problems with our cars or our work, or, you know, financial issues, and so we have to find something, and we have to find that aspect of ourselves which we trust. And so calmness has a lot to do with trust in my contemplation, as I was thinking about it, that and and we have to, you know, there are certain aspects of ourselves which are subject to change, like our personalities, and but deeper than that, as has been mentioned, but with meditation and everything, we have to find some way, like through meditation practice and breathing, to find us. Because when everything's going wrong, if you can't find the sort of the witness aspect of yourself, that, I mean, that's the most reliable aspect of reality. And if you can't find that, then it's going to be hard to not keep getting upset.
So the calm is like the pause, you know, to go to that place.
Exactly. So kind of like with a hurricane, you have the calm in the middle of the storm, and that aspect of ourselves, which is surrounded by activity, which appears as chaos.
Maurice, is that you?
Yes, it's me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that meditation and concentration does allow for detachment or critical distance. Yet there may be this anxiety or this lack of calmness or these conditions that are even hidden, unconscious to us maybe. But one of the ways to begin to work through this, as we've been told, is through duty. And so I always ask myself the question, where does duty lie? Where does my duty lie? Especially if there's a conflict of duty, which then makes one less calm. But that's, by asking that kind of question, it gets me to look at what conditions I'm willing to accept in the world, and what conditions I think are not relevant or artificial. And in the end, it then goes to the heart, because when you start asking those questions, it really gets to where your heart is about where your duty is. So that's just an addition to what's been said. Obviously, meditation and concentration ahead of time are very important too. Thank you.
Thank you, Maurice. Yeah, and as when Ken mentioned meditation, I also feel that duty is crucial. You know, it's dharma is from the root, which means that which supports, and you know, our duties support not only ourselves but each other, and that is very important in building trust. And through building trust with others, it helps you to build trust with other aspects of yourself. You know, through service and sacrifice, we realize things about ourselves that we weren't aware of.
The other thing too is if one's really focused on duty, one forgets oneself.
Absolutely, yes. And that's the really a mysterious thing about it, because um, as far as who we are and who we think is meaning who, most of the ideas that we have are really an arrangement of ideas. And so, you know, these are pre-existing words from dictionaries. And so we arrange them in a certain configuration and identify with them. And so, I mean, in terms of calibrating, when you meet people, sometimes you're meeting constellations of engendered polarities. You know, it's just this structure that people have built alliances with. They have they kind of like a baseball card collection or something, or they have an array of different archetypes in their mind, which they have affiliations with. And so you're kind of like, you're given multiple choice. Well, do I go towards this configuration of, by engendered, I mean like yin and yang forces involved, soft, hard, round, curved, you know, the different aspects to design. And so it's just, you know, there are younger people who it seemed not, you could call them indigo children, but they naturally don't have that constellation of all these configurations that they've come up with. And so when you're speaking with them, you don't have to worry about multiple choice, like, you know, because it's either one way or the other. There's no flexibility in between with. So thank you for mentioning that about Dharma. I kind of got off track.
Thank you, Truth, for your comments. They're very helpful. And the discussion's been very helpful so far. It's broadening the subject a lot and deepening it too.
Thank you.
There were
Who's
some other-
next?
There were some other hands up. I saw David's hand at one point. Would you like to make a point, David?
Yeah, okay. I would say, like Maurice was just saying, Helena, Maurice, and Truth were all covering things that were coming up in my mind also. When we're focused on our purpose in any given situation, or he was using even the broader term duty and dharma, I think we'll be in a state of calmness. When we're thrown off of that, when we're distracted for some reason, I think that's when the calmness goes, and there can be many levels to that distraction. You know, we might be worried about what people are thinking of us, or we have some ulterior motives getting in there in terms of what we're doing, and all those perturbations that are other than the self. Through that, we lose our calmness. Yeah.
That reminds me of the selective attention test. Have you ever seen the videos for selective attention test?
No, I haven't, but
Oh, it really reminded me of Buddhism and the concept of Maya. And so just the way that our attention is divided, we're not, you know, we focus on this and then we focus on that. And there's a gap in between the things that we're focusing on. At any given moment, like there are lots of things happening around me right now, and I'm focused on Zoom. and I'm trying to listen. But, you know, that's a very small sliver of the spectrum of what's happening around all of us at any given moment. So we're kind of experiencing a selective attention of reality, and easily distracted. And so yeah, to like Ken was saying about meditation, like we need a practice to help us return to our sense of calmness.
Yeah.
I
Would you
think.
say, in kind of a very everyday sense, when we lose our calmness, is that an emotional state or a mental state or both? Or when we're not calm, you know, it's easy to think of, you know, he's being emotional, you know.
Well, all of that information is us calibrating. We need that disturbance in order to recalibrate. And if you're not aware of what needs calibrating, then you're not calm. You're just delusional. So all of those emotions, we register those emotions, and that is real calmness when you're registering things. In my experience.
How about this? You know, he can really push my buttons. What's happening? You're in a calm state, and somebody says something, you know, and it or to someone else, and it just you know, throws them off.
Well, when I was growing up, my sister, she was great at pushing my buttons, and so I had growing up, I had a lot of practice with that, and so there's that thing called self-righteous anger. That's the wrong way for it, but it's what I think of as a valid reason for being upset. That something is actually upsetting and people are involved. And so you know, this whole question of nonviolence and how do you react to violence?
Right.
I don't know. Every situation is different. I mean, when you're a little child, you may think to yourself, "Oh, if I hit him in the shoulder softly, will that be enough to get him to stop?" I mean,
Right.
these kind of bottom-up arguments, because you're not stopping. You're not, you know, if you're not starting from a spiritual perspective, you're starting from the physical, mechanical. What mechanical activity is going to bring a resolution?
Yeah.
Judy?
Yes, I think that it's a very important question about how you react to violence and calmness. Having studied the martial arts, I know one of the first things that you have to do if you are attacked is to remain calm and to react, to block the attack as best you can, hopefully without hurting the other one, but sometimes that can't be avoided. And this seems to be something in all situations that we need to deal with, is that we have to react, but we don't want to lose it, you know, because someone either accidentally or purposely almost strikes you. I almost got hit in the jaw once in a football stadium by a guy in front of me who jumped up and his elbow was headed right at my jaw, and I just blocked it, and which I had learned doing Shaolin Kempo, and fortunately I didn't get clocked. He was a great big guy and would have knocked me silly. And then, you know, I calmly said to him, "I appreciate your enthusiasm for your team, but you're in a stadium with a lot of people and you could hurt somebody." Well, he didn't like this very much, but you know, I just had to tell him because he almost is a great big person swinging his arms around as if there's no one else near him. And I think that's important to remain calm in the crisis situation. I know Jefferson also said in debate, and I'm sure there were plenty of them around the American Revolution, that when angry, count to 10, and when very angry, count to 100. Before you respond to an insult or whatever has happened. And I think that's also very important, is sometimes to restrain, and sometimes you just have to react, which I've learned to do. But if you lose it, you're gonna lose the fight, or you're going to lose the argument because you lost it. And I think that is vital in this issue. And what do you think?
Well, I come from a background of working at the concert theater and various events, and I witnessed once a bar fight. Well, I saw it right after it was over, and I saw this guy calm down. And then I read an article which said that the blood flow in the brain is affected by the fight or flight tendency. Like when people are in the fight or flight mode, it shifts the blood flow to the motor aspects of, put all the attention to quick reactions and responses of motor. And so the gentleman, as he calmed down, he got real quiet. And then what I saw is that as the blood flow returns to the aspects of the brain which are involved in processing what happened, and the mind shifts from survival to like higher thinking. I mean, the first thing he did actually was blame the other person. And then he got quiet after blaming the other person, because the blood flow is returning and you're getting your faculties back, and the people start to realize what they did wrong. So one thing I've always found very helpful is being extremely polite, because when I started the concert theater, I was a security guard, and I never had any problem. I dealt with just using polite language, and that worked in every situation, and people responded well to that. And then the other thing is waiting, because if we wait, sometimes the answers come to us, and like they say, dwell on that which is to be realized, from the Rig Veda. And then Judge had on his dying deathbed, go slow, there's need for calm. And I think being cautious and going slowly is the preferred method whenever it's an option.
Could I ask a question?
Yeah.
This thing about Judge, go slow, hold fast, go slow, right?
Yeah.
There's need for calm. I wanted to ask a question kind of in the theosophical movement, kind of a context. And I think everything that we've talked about so far has would contribute, I would think, to that. It's not like they're unrelated, but in theosophy, okay, in other words, he was dying, and he must have said that to people he thought could do something with those words, right? Or at least that they would repeat it to somebody else who could do something with those words. He must have thought that panic in the theosophical movement, or getting excited or getting emotional, just wasn't really going to help. What do you think about calmness in relation to working for theosophy?
There's that famous quote that getting angry is like taking poison and thinking that it's going to hurt somebody else. Well, emotion, it means of motion, and getting emotional, I think that if you have reason to move, then you should move, but otherwise you don't just move randomly or erratically. In terms of the theosophical context of that, I find what he said, I always applied it to America at large, that go slow. I mean, America is kind of like, through manifest destiny, so to speak, really branched out and caused a lot of harm along the way with the wars and everything. But back to the smaller comics, I haven't studied that closely in terms of those individuals, but he was a lawyer, and he handled everything very carefully when he went to deal with that what's called the judge affair.
Yeah, that would be a good example. Now, just in your own efforts for Theosophy, there's a lot of people that are really grateful for what you're doing with this Aquarian series. And you have this job that's quite the roller coaster, and you're able to kind of keep the calm thing going. And every week you produce these flyers. There must be some kind of a calm place in there that this is all coming from.
Well, calm has to do with trust and being entrusted. If you're not calm, then who's going to trust you?
Yeah.
Like, are they going to trust their business with you if you're erratic? Or not business or dharma? That just is a general. I think calm has a lot to do with trust and finding that aspect of yourself that you can retreat to if you have to retreat, which is reliable, that which is true, or that which is like inherent wisdom. It's not something subject to destruction.
Trust. Speaking of trust, Judge would always talk about reliance on the law.
Oh yeah, there's so many things people are bringing up which are so significant. That's really significant.
Would you care to talk about why that's important?
So, for example, the word thing comes from Scandinavian, a group of people agreeing upon something, and it was in the context of law. So that, there's an issue, and then they had a group of people deal with the issue, and it was called a thing. And so this consensus of, like Humpty Dumpty fell off the wall because he didn't want to, use words that other people, they couldn't put it back together because he used his own words in his own way and his own logic. He wasn't willing to talk with other people on and meet them on their own terms. So I mean, we validate reality through each other. That doesn't mean that our own experiences are not valid. And law is a consensus, and it's the conscience. It's people recognizing what seemed right. And there's something I wanted to mention, which was from Penrose, which had to do with artificial intelligence. And people are getting very worried that artificial intelligence is going to take out over the world. How do you stay calm if everything's going to be reduced to automations? That just makes people very vulnerable. If they're just everything's automated, what are we needed for? And so Penrose, he said that the one thing that algorithms and formula don't account for is understanding, which would be like the Atma Buddhi in the theosophical phraseology. All the high level algorithmic things that that the computers can be triggered to do doesn't account for that which understands what's going on.
Deep understanding.
Yeah, it's something beyond words. There's the witness aspect of us, which knows intuitively that something's true, and it's that part of us which validates that. That's the ability to trust ourselves, and that ability to trust is what underlies the ability to remain calm.
Judy.
Yes, you mentioned the old thing in the saga of Burnt Njal, which is from the Icelandic. They had a meeting every year of all the tribes, and they called it the All Thing, and that's how it
Thank
got
you.
into English. Yeah, it's a wonderful thing to read because it's a real democracy in the Scandinavian tradition. Of course, so much Icelandic got into English, that ing. But also what I wanted to ask about is the relationship between calmness and patience. Because if you don't have any patience, you can't be calm. And I knew someone once who said, I've been in a theosophist for 30 years. Now, why can't I astral travel? I mean, which is, of course, not the purpose of theosophy. But, why haven't I made more progress? And it's so important that Judge says go slow. Because if you're not ready to move into the astral, you're going to have a horror, as it says in Bulwer Lytton, with the trial of the neophyte. But unfortunately, there are a lot of people that they just want quick progress. Americans are very much like that. Why doesn't this just happen all of a sudden? Well, it's not going to. It's not the nature of it. But it seems that the Shila and, the Shanti virtue is very important because you've got to endure forevermore, perhaps, or would seem to your consciousness forevermore. So maybe you could address that. What's the importance of patience? Because I'm sure you need a lot of patience in your work. Okay.
Well, patience is very important, especially you see something and you want to do it yourself because you see a solution, something that could work, but often you have to wait until you hear back from other people. If you take initiative and do it yourself without checking with them, then that might not be what they wanted or what they planned on. So I think that patience has a lot to do with consideration for other people. And that's like in the golden verses of Pythagoras, it says that thoughtlessness is the cause of selfishness. And impatience, the word patient is also like someone who's in a hospital and getting help because they're sick. And so there's just brilliant wordplay in our language. So by being considerate for someone else, you're almost treating them like a patient. So if you're patient with yourself, you're sympathizing with this. There's empathy involved in patience. It's a careful, caring thing to be patient with yourself. That's the hardest thing sometimes, to not only to be patient with other people, but to be patient with your own faults. I mean, you are your own worst critic, right? So I can name lots of things wrong with myself, so to speak, and that could be really unsettling. It's hard to remain calm if you're so hard on yourself. So you have to treat yourself with care as well as being considerate of other people. I think that's what patience. That's an aspect of patience. What do you think?
Well, I think it definitely is. Yes, I would like to hear what others think.
Yeah, I want, Truth, is it okay if I randomly call on some different people?
Absolutely. I'm just trying to have a conversation, collective learning experience.
Victoria, I've always thought you were a very calm person.
Oh dear. Oh, that's interesting. It's helpful to see. I think it's a great conversation. There's times for action. There's times for emotion. And calm is such a positive word, but it could also be someone who seems to be calm but is depressed or lonely. And when we see others, we can't really judge, but we do develop a sensibility about it. And I think that's part of being human, that we see someone who's quiet and we say that person is really unhappy without words being shared between us. It's a good reminder that being human means that we can do this not with a selfish motive, but with a motive, we might say, inner calmness.
A motive of inner calmness. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I like that. Thank you.
Well, thank you, by the way. It's a great conversation.
Odd in the Netherlands. Are you, what do you think about calmness?
Well, I think it has everything to do with your inner state of consciousness, with the level you have developed, and that level is most of the time sometimes changing. And meditation and concentration is very important. Stay as much as possible in your higher aspects.
You make it sound like an effect. Do you think it's an effect of something?
No, it is an aspect of free will, but it's also in your character.
Yeah.
You are the accumulation of your thoughts, and that develops your character. So everyone has his own character and previous life thoughts, previous life, and if a person is able to be in the higher aspects of his thinking habits, then he will be calm, whatever happens. Practice the paramitas in practice, then you always be calm. Quite a challenge.
I agree, but as Penrose said, there's that aspect of us which understands everything that you said. And so, not that that's a distinct, separate aspect of ourselves, but it's like an underlying aspect of ourselves. And I think returning to that underlying part that's engaging in all of this is to me, that's always been calmness.
Kelly, what do you think about calmness?
Oh, I don't really have anything else to add. But I know that there's, well, I was thinking about pilots and, people that are EMTs and different professions that, they have to be calm in their work to, be successful. But I think Diane has her hand up. So.
But I wanted
We'll
before we go to Diane, I wanted to follow up on with you, Kelly. Do you think that calmness is a thing that it sounds to me, okay, this analogy of the EMT and the airline pilot, the thing that those people have to be is really reliable, right? They can't just run away or
Right.
because there's a lot at stake in what they do. It sounds like there's this relationship between duty and calmness, circling back around to that. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that plays into it, definitely. So.
Diane?
Well, I don't know how many musicians there are amongst us, but at one time before I ran into theosophy at 18, music was my life. And if you want to be a musician or you want to master an instrument, you have to have a great deal of patience and you have to be calm. Even if you have to practice 8 hours a day, lots of times, you have to practice if you're hungry or your mouth is bleeding from the clarinet I was trying to work with. But you do need a great deal of calmness, because the reason is because you love music. You love music more than yourself, a lot more than yourself, or how uncomfortable you may be. And you love the other people that you play with in the orchestra. You want to be good. And that's all I have to contribute.
Yeah, I've worked with music for a while, and I'm always waiting on what they're gonna do, because I changed the lighting to the musicians, and so yeah, they practice so much. It's incredible. That's, that's a good point about music, and yeah.
Andy, you think there must be an analogy there somewhere, in relationship to what you're saying, and some kind of parallel with the spiritual life. Do you think that there's something there?
I like
Well,
what she said about love.
yeah, that's what I was trying to make. The point I was trying to make, you actually love Bach, for example. You want to get this duet right. You want to respect Bach. Bach is based on math a great deal. And you just love this subject and the beauty of it so much. You don't care how much you're suffering, or sometimes how much you're making other people suffer, like the neighbors, like if you're practicing, late at night, which is against the law. But it's a matter of impersonality, I think, because you're not personal anymore when you love the beauty of music.
Oh, that's awesome. That could be very helpful. And when someone's trying to learn how to be calm.
Very helpful.
Yeah, they say music helps. A lot of people, well, around the world, Christianity and the religion, some are more visual, and then some, like in India, in Buddhism, the first step is becoming a listener, and then in Hinduism, you have that which is heard and that which is remembered. So it's emphasis on the ears and musicianship, so to speak, and just and then there's some traditions where they're focused on taste, like to develop a taste for knowledge, and so there's just a variety of emphasis and around the world.
Do you think there's such a thing as an active calmness? Because I'm thinking of the opposite of passivity.
Well, I think of reassurance when you say that. If someone is reassuring to someone else, then would that be considered an act of calmness?
Yeah. This goes back to the leadership point that was brought up earlier.
Some of you have heard me say this, and I knew someone once who was a professional airline pilot. You don't want the airline pilot to be angry or upset or not focused on what he or she is doing. And the comment made about this person was, flying wasn't what he did. Flying was what he was. And it's a reminder for all of us that unconsciously there's something that we are. Now, from a theosophical perspective, we can examine it, but there's something innate in being human that is sometimes hard to define, but is still real. and sometimes very harmful to other people if it's not well intentioned.
Very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
David?
I was just thinking the way some of these definitions have been coming up. Often we think of calmness as a stability, which maybe is more of a receptive or passive place, but calmness as an active principle.
Yeah.
I was just jotting down, maybe some of the qualities that goes along with that people have been describing, especially when Diane brought up the music and playing under all kinds of conditions. So maybe part of calmness is mixed into it is commitment, one-pointedness, purpose, things like that, all go into a state of active calmness.
Yeah. Very helpful. Thank you. Truth?
I agree. I consider that all having to do with calibration. All of those different things need to be taken into account.
Yeah, also theosophy helps us be calm. When you think it gives us a broader awareness of the nature of things. Like people that understand reincarnation have a different perspective how things unfold in life and what the possibilities are than someone that just has a one life idea. More or less, you got to get it done this month.
Yeah, I agree that is a huge difference.
Looks like Judy's got her hand up.
Yes, just to further make a comment about music, it said that music soothes the savage beast. I mean, it has a wonderful calming effect, but I think you don't need to say that there's no excitement that can go along with calmness, because I remember I was a teenage musician for most of my teenage years, and in high school we had a marching band, and I can remember the excitement in the band room before we were going to march, but we were also calm because we were prepared. We knew exactly when to play, when the signals were, how to march, how to stay together, how to make the turn on the University Avenue in Palo Alto. And we knew all this. So although we were very excited and thrilled to be doing what we were doing, playing Sousa marches and coming down the street, we also had a sense of preparedness that made no fear. And we weren't nervous. And I think it's because of our wonderful bandmaster who taught us so very well. So I know the voice of the silence says, if thou camest prepared, then have no fear. So if you're going to be examined or you have a performance or something, you can get up for it. The adrenaline is flowing, but there can also be the calmness behind the preparation, which I think is very important. Now, I wonder what others think about that.
So do I.
There is something about being prepared before a meeting. We have a lot of meetings where there's readings assigned, right? And it's just my observation that if a person has a chance, at least in my case, if I have a chance to read that reading like 3 times prior to the meeting, even if I don't say anything in the meeting, there's a preparedness, and there's I would say probably a deeper and more active listening that becomes enabled. And there was an article I remember in the Theosophical Movement magazine. It comes out of Bombay, I believe, and that magazine is still present, and the articles in it are still dynamite. And I forgot, I think it was like Thoughts About Lodge Meetings or something like that. That was the title of it. And it was talking about the preparedness that people can bring to these lodge meetings. And if they study and they meditate and they think about the theme that the meeting is going to be on and so forth, and that everybody kind of comes prepared and they bring something to it. And I think that's an example of what you've been able to help us with, Truth, today, because you're able to kind of draw out of us all of our preparedness, because we had a rich plethora of a really helpful discussion, I thought. So thank you very much.
much.
It just show the other thing that I'm learning is that these presentations can be just a variety of approach, a real variety of approach. Sometimes they can be somebody who does a big presentation and there's all kinds of slides and there's this big development and so forth. Other ones can be, like a short talk and then somebody else does questions and answers. There's just so many ways, and the different lodges have developed so many different modalities over the last 100 years that this Aquarian series can be kind of a sampling of all these different modalities, it seems. So the one that you pioneered for us today is definitely a helpful modality, I think.
Thank you. I'm just glad that people participate in the conversation.
Well, thank you for facilitating the conversation. It's great.
And
You're welcome.
next week, don't tell anybody, but Helena will be telling us about egoism and magnanimity. And we're very much looking forward to that. And thank you very much, Truth.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for keeping us calm.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Have a great week.
being here.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.